Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. So you're getting a raw and real Sunday. It is what it is. So I just got done with a call for a mind-body coaching program that I was on, and I got a download in the midst of it that was very striking to me, that one of the ways that we can really demonstrate what true love is honesty. Love is honest. Love is allowing. Love is all things. So love in its purest form would have to be truth, right? Love is truth, awareness, etc. And we parlay that into a lot of different definitions as we are growing up and forming into our ideas and our predispositions of what love is. And when we are trained to believe that love looks a certain way, feels a certain way, and we are grown into a certain sediment of this is really what love feels like, what family, what connection, what tribe, etc. feels like. This is what it is. This is how it behaves, and this is how you specifically plug in or, peripherally ride, however you do. A lot of us, especially with real tricky backgrounds, we were kind of just a peripheral ancillary thing that never really felt quite connected to our tribe. Or we felt like we were really, I'm part of the tribe kind of, and yet I serve some function that doesn't seem like everybody else in the tribe. I don't understand this. And so, especially scapegoat children, truth speakers, generational curse breakers, however you identify yourself, light worker, starseed, chosen one, anointed one, however you're identifying yourself as one of those people who was kind of riding on the outside of a system, wondering what love really means, when it seems that there's a correlation between pain and love. This sensation that I'm having here is what we're calling family, what we're calling a relationship, what I'm seeing growing up as what mom and dad are, and that connective tissue seems a little weird to me, and I'm not sure that I fully understand this. However, it's what I'm being told, what I'm being bred in to understand, and what I'm being grown and taught to call normal, healthy, love, whatever words we used in our family connection. This is how you tribe, man. This is how you stay alive in your tribe. And because of our very primal need, which has nothing to do with the frontal lobe or executive function. It really doesn't. Our primal need is for survival. Survival and frontal lobe live in very different parts of the brain. They serve very different functions. The survival mode, which is back here, the amygdala, that's the one that kicks up when we're really not sure we fit into the tribe, or we have to do a whole lot of dancing and romancing and, all kinds of sidewinding stuff to either, fit in, adapt, or become very small, invisible, and just not even terribly perceptible in order for safety to be guaranteed as much as possible. And that is what is constantly happening back here with that little lizard brain back here. The reptilian brain back here is going survive. It doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't have thought process. It is completely unrelated to the executive function, the frontal lobe of the brain, where we're going to really make some good decisions. If we have that little sucker in charge, and it's racing around not sure what love, acceptance, etc. is, it's doing whatever it can and being given all the labels of how you're going to dance and make that, parlay into this situation. And because we grow up in a tribe, we're born into one, a family, a dynamic, a something, no matter how disjointed, crazy, great, awesome, whatever, wherever it is on the spectrum, no matter what it is or where it is, it doesn't matter. It is a system we're born into. And our primal need answers the tribal call of this is what you do to adapt and survive in this environment. And especially if it's chaotic, crazy, really traumatic, loud, drama, etc. And our attachment phase, when we're growing our brain, our neurology, and all of the systems that teach us how to interact with the rest of the world and how to survive the tribe, if that's what we're doing, or how to thrive within the tribe, if that's what we're doing, and all the weird variations that exist in between those, because nobody lives in a pocket of just one thing or the other. We're dancing and moving in different states of being in different domains where this is all shifting and changing. However, if our baseline home training is you're gonna tribe this way. We're going to really answer more to people who tribe like we do. And unfortunately, the world as a collective consciousness tribes very codependently. That is the old system that you see is coming down everywhere. However, at the core of all of it fundamentally is the laws of the universe, which are based in truth. And truth here on the earth, the greatest expression, the most loving thing that we can do is stand in the truth of us and allow others to stand in the truth of them. I didn't say abusively, I didn't say toxically, I didn't say any of that. It's to notice the truth, stand in ours, which is, I'm not gonna tribe anywhere where I have to be partially unalive just to be able to, fit in here. I'm not gonna chop off my left arm because that's the entrance fee to be, one-handed in this organization. I prefer to work with two, and, that's fine that that's your angle and that's what you'd like to do. However, that's not the quality of life, and that's just the truth of my existence. And I love myself quite enough to recognize that I deserve to be in a place where I'm thriving and not, having to be unaliving myself just to fit in here. This is ridiculous. It feels awful. And so when we can twist away from that kind of thing and get to that clarity within us, we then can see the clarity of other people and what they're doing and allow them to do that somewhere else, because it's not matching. We're not vibing together anymore. I'm really not magnetically drawn to what you're putting out over here, because my magnetic thing, it's really more repelled by that at this point, because I'm understanding I'm not being drawn in by the radar beam, the vectoring process of what codependency and toxic connections, karmic bonds, however you want to see those dark agendas, how they feed one another. We're really, we're not going to want to really repeat that or add any gas to that. And so the way that we do that is to set up the honesty and the clarity, the truth and the wisdom to come through very, very, very clearly and kindly, because when we love ourselves, we truly have reached into that space where we can give ourselves the grace that we need to say, I was really over here chopping off my left arm every day. I was growing one back, I'd come back, chop it off. Okay, I guess. And we get past the point of saying, oh my God, what was I doing? How could I do that? We get through all of that stuff, because the true work there is to come to the very solid realization that when we have been taught to tribe in such a manner, how else would we have behaved? When I'm working with people who've done really horrible stuff, they're in a prison situation and they, kind of get to this burp out point on their own volition. I don't ask, but when people, but particularly ones who've done some very nasty stuff, when they get to that point where they can really admit that, it's quite shocking sometimes to think that the woman on the other side of the conversation is going to say, well, if you're waiting for me to be horrified, by what you chose to do in that situation to exact whatever you needed to bring balance, in your humble opinion of what that balance was going to look like, if you're waiting for me to be shocked by the fact that, your action was aggressive, hostile, and involved a whole lot of, very ugly material that some of us are having some difficulty looking at, I'm not shocked by that. 808, thank you very much. I'm not shocked by that. I'm not horrified by that. I'm not disgusted by that. I'm not anything by that, because I understand that when we build systems that build monsters, I wouldn't expect Frankenstein to act any differently. So when we're engineering things in families and we're hatching people and growing them into, these situations of depravity and very low ball intentions, very, earth-based, we're very fundamentally, we're withdrawing resources, we don't have a whole lot, we're in scrap, grab and growl mode, fighting, scrapping to live and exist. That's exactly the tank that this stuff is built in. It's, it's not built in a vacuum, it's built in a system, and our system and society, the consciousness of the human being at the moment has been one of a very dark nature, a very carnal nature, and that is why we are switching it up and moving it up now in another great awakening, another awakening period where we're coming into a realization that, I'm not looking to, see someone witness their awful, have them witness it, and not take that opportunity to say, let the monkey go ahead and climb down off your back and stop haranguing you and banging you over the head, because you doing something really just horrific. What's horrific? Being out of balance is already, not feeling good. How far out of balance people go, we get super judgy thinking that being out of balance and cussing somebody out, in our car as we're tailgating them, wishing they'd hurry, was somehow better, or, well, it's not as bad as over here unaliving someone physically. We're kind of unaliving over here energetically. We're unaliving ourselves by giving that person, that situation, that thing, the ability to continue to make us sing in a key that's it's not one that really tones in very well for the rest of the earth anymore, because we're just not singing that old birthday song in that way anymore. We changed the tune, and we've also readjusted what we're going to sing, how we're going to celebrate, and how we're going to bring everything forward. And those of us that wish to do that dance differently, we have to separate sometimes and move away from the tribe, because loving someone, loving something, experiencing love means we're experiencing the truth, the honesty, and the balance of what I see, what I feel, and I can manage everything in here, and I feel very fluid and capable that no matter what is happening, I'm good. And when I am in that hood, I can allow you to be, a horrible person, someone who's made horrible choices and behaves very, very fundamentally, socially badly and unacceptably for my world. Absolutely, we can't be friends, if you're going to act like this. However, being able to witness that, understand that, and then be able to work with people, who can spit that out themselves, 11:11, and come to that realization and then be told, hey, you weren't going to come out really doing much of anything except what you did when you were handed all of your specific ingredients. Now, why your neighbor down the street in the hood didn't, go exactly the same direction is irrelevant, because their ingredients, their body, their experience, their nervous system, their history, their life, their genetic input, everything about them, their social dynamic was independent to them specifically. However, the system in general is broken regardless of whether somebody clawed their way out of it or not, because the majority of the people in these situations of depravity, etc., which we all were, a codependent relationship is a deficit on some side or another. So we all were. It's on a continuum, but behaving as if this continuum over here is irrelevant, doesn't exist, or doesn't somehow play into how we're going to dance with others, sing with others, and party with others, etc., is a bit of a misnomer. We're missing the point. Truly coming to that place of balance, honesty, and truth is awareness and clarity about what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, and is this taking me off my square. And also coming to the understanding that whatever I've chosen, whatever square I stood on that I did get knocked off of, there's a reason that it was a square that wasn't stable to begin with. And that can be very difficult to be looking at or thinking about if we're constantly trying to erect ourselves back onto the old square that life is knocking us off of. We have a full system of support, energetically, spiritually, etc. We have all kinds of teams of light workers and helpers in, non-local places, higher dimensional beings, etc., that are here for us. So every time we're brushing up against life, rubbing up against life, pounding against life, life is pounding us, whatever it is, it doesn't feel very gentle. However, that is life. That is our particular circumstances, our own little monster lab over here where Frankenstein's going, hey, I really want to know how to be, me, engineered the way that I was. However, we need to tear down the engineering the way that I was so that I can be the best version of me. And when we look at it more like that, we have some detachment and a better ability sometimes to understand that the behavior of who I was 25 years ago or even 25 days ago was based on exactly what I knew then, etc. We say that, and yet we don't really embody that. We made decisions based on an old paradigm that built up a lot of monsters in us that even if we're functional in one area, if we're not real terribly adaptive in another, it's not any better to be sitting in prison in, a federal system than to sit in the prison in our own little self-righteous mind going, we're somehow better. But the quality of life is still trapped somewhere. And it's a false illusion to believe that the quality of life needs to rest on outside circumstances or outside people, or connecting into tribes where we need to be, somewhat dead inside in order to fit in, or we need to somehow tamp down or damp down what we are because it's too intimidating for other people. I love working with people who tribe up, maybe forever, maybe independently for a little while. We're just going to dance a bit here. I love folks like that can move with that kind of fluidity, because the dance of life isn't stagnant, it isn't stale, it is inherently moving, because it's an evolving process of cycles constantly. So if we're slowed down somewhere, we're literally stagnant and just kind of there's a reason, because life reproduces itself. Its vitality, life force energy is vitally alive, and if we're not, that's part of what was over there in the unaliving of this monster that somebody engineered out of the ignorance of how they were engineered. This is nothing more than programming of what we were told to believe of ourselves, what we were told to believe we had to do to fit in. We don't have to answer a primal need when we're not in a primal function. When we can get to that state of love, pure love, is that I'm not in a primal human emotion. I'm in the flow state of love, which is beyond the human being, the human experience, and the human interaction of how we try to narrow it down into, I love my mom this way, I love my dad this way, I love my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my lover, whatever this way, I love my children. We try to segment ourselves out and separate ourselves and divide, ourselves based on labeling, and divide and conquer, whether it's with a good intention or, a darker intention, dividing out and trying to find out how we're not in love with things or to define what love is. It's the flow state of, I can allow myself to have done everything I've done and be totally in love with me, and I can stand and witness that you have your own stuff too. And if we have that conversation together, then I can help you and you can help me by witnessing each other very kindly, very respectfully, and honoring that fact that life and life force vitality lives in you. And now that we've gotten to this point of realness with one another, true love and awareness that we're in this together, that neither one of us is any better than the other and neither one of us knows any better than the other what to do necessarily. However, if we can stand together in that moment of vulnerability, trust, and safety all at the same time, and we've, carefully engineered that, not with that old toolbox, none of that stuff, we deconstruct the old and we rebuild and create those situations with those around us safely, and with help from people who do know better how to do the process because they've worked the process. But we can then begin to shape and change what we call love and how we move through the world as love. And loving someone doesn't mean that you sit down at coffee with them or that you ever see them again if they're abusive in their behavior. However, trying to convince someone what love is whenever we're not really in that flow state of what true love feels like, it's going to be very easy to want to withhold, any interaction or any interface with other people who have harmed us. So there's a lot of tedium in there, and yet it's a basic concept, and it tacks out and tracks out in ways that the more we answer that need to, let me get to the truth, the honesty, the brilliance, the safety, the awareness, and the clarity with how I'm going to not chop off my own hand just to be able to get into this group, how I'm going to tribe with me and all of me and my energetic tribe of me, as well as all of that around me that supports me. And then when I really, really am honing this well, simultaneously bumping up against life and having life bump up against me, and fluidly moving as much as possible, fluidly moving with those rubs and understanding, ow, this, I don't like this, so I'm going to want to naturally move away from it. However, naturally moving away from it means I brush up against and say, I'm going to linger for a moment, perhaps, depending on how dangerous it is, for what does this represent to me? Why is this bothering me? Because if I automatically solve the problem with, I got to stop feeling this way, let me go ahead and, nope, not that. We stay in that flow state, that balance of true love and awareness, truth, same thing. If we stay in that with ourselves and we stay present with some part of me feels really challenged by what's happening here in front of me and with me. I don't like this person, or it's their fault, or whatever. when we really approach that with truth and clarity and become that person that can say inside of the little me, hey, I hear some things that sound distressing, let's talk. And we turn that discussion within. We can then hold those discussions with other people. However, as long as we're looking at other people as the source of our problem and our solution, we're wrong twice, and we're over here looking at a monster, judging harshly while we're allowing the whatever is building us to think that way to continue building our paradigm. And it's equally as awful to be that unconscious and that unaware of our own loving frequency, our own ability to reach that life force vitality. That is egregious enough in and of itself for us to be denied of that within ourselves. However, then we keep modeling it and building more monsters everywhere. And believe me, they're being taken down rapidly because they were built on shifting sands that weren't real to begin with. It's just taking, a long chronological time, it looks like. However, it looks to me energetically, this stuff is slamming down everywhere, exponentially. And we're into a whole new game now with Uranus and Gemini. So there are a lot of things that are happening in the quantum space. There's a lot of things that are happening, period. However, the frequencies, the higher we vibe, is the higher our awareness will allow us to stand in the conversations of truth. Truth and love are the same exact thing. If I can truthfully look at myself and say, yeah, I acted like a real jerk. I was a whole tool bag on that. That was awful. I chose badly. When I can stand and look in the mirror and be able to say, or look reflectively within, and say, yeah, I understand. That was the monster that was built. Those were the decisions that I helped build that because I was being given that information of how to be this person in the world. And that became my focus, and my agenda was to how to be a good person, a right person, a surviving person, how to be a person that's going to be alive in this situation. And it is in fact not even close to the full of me, the whole of me, or the real of me. And everywhere that I can get really okay with, that really wasn't the me that I wish to give any more energy to. And I'm sorry. And here's what I do to make up for those choices I made for myself as well as others. And when we start having those conversations, the energy will move, the stagnation will groove, because it doesn't have a choice. We're changing the tune. We're going, and we're saying, no, that's really not tuned. We're going to ask you to, get it right there. When you start asking a quantum field to tune you and allow you to tune into it and tune it even higher, 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 it responds. So get ready. However, it responds and the music sounds so good. And that, the fear that we won't know how to open our mouth and say it or sing it, it's okay. It doesn't matter. Because the truth and the reality is we're kicking out dust, I have to have my dryer vents blown out pretty routinely because we have a lot of hair in this house, mine, and 3 animals that are super hairy. So it has to unclog, and I can always tell when it's kind of clogging. I can see the signs of, my clothes are taking 3 hours to, dry, etc. So notice, where am I starting to clog down, and then get right to it. It sounds crazy. However, the minute that the clog is gone, we rest in the knowing and we build the trust and the resilience and the okayness that even if I open my mouth and go, and in this situation, it's okay. I'm safe because what? I always have me that's reminding me of the inside conversation, and it's not the lab person over here, the Dr. Weird that's over here building some monster. That's not me on the table anymore. That's your project and somebody else. However, it's not me. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that you're well. I hope you're enjoying your day no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember to get within your skin because you're divine. It's absolutely gorgeous, totally lovely, so, so beautiful, and is never limited to your primal self. Divine is well beyond the human experience. It's well beyond the most awful thing that ever happened to you or anyone in your lineage. It's well beyond the worst thing that's ever happened on this planet. It is. However, the 3D belief and the effect out here is very palpable and it's very real, and we very much experience in our bodies. However, we can help mitigate and heal the body experience that we've had and the mind experience that we've had by integrating the two through that honest, truthful, loving conversation with ourselves, and with our team and with others eventually. However, please start with yourself and never try to ask somebody out there to love you more and accept you more than you're willing to really give for yourself and do for yourself, because they won't. They can't fill that void. You're asking them to hit an itch that they can't itch or scratch that itch for you. That's an internal scratch. So get busy with you and enjoy your day, and take care of you, sweet friend, and I'll see you again next time. Mwah. Bye.